At my sister's baby shower, someone wrote on the whiteboard, "One of us got a promotion, one's still on unemployment." My sister glanced at me and said, "I mean, facts are facts." But the look on her face changed when she saw my card. "So, facts are facts," Marissa said, shrugging with that smirk she's perfected since we were kids. She didn't even look ashamed when she glanced at me after reading the whiteboard. I stood there like an idiot, smiling like I hadn't just been gutted in front of 40 people. But then she opened my gift and suddenly, the look in her eyes changed. I didn't expect the baby shower to be fun. It wasn't about me, and honestly, that's fine. It never is. Marissa's always been the one people orbit around, the magnetic type who could walk into a room full of strangers and walk out with 10 new friends. I'm quieter, more private. Grew up thinking that made me the serious one, the smart one. But somewhere along the line, quiet became invisible, and now here I am, unemployed and sleeping in a sublet apartment in San Jose where the shower only runs hot for 6 minutes. We grew up in Mountain View, California back when it still had some local character and wasn't all tech companies and Teslas. Our parents still live in the same craftsman-style house on Oak Ridge Drive. It's the kind of place with a worn wooden porch, rose bushes that bloom like clockwork, and the smell of eucalyptus drifting from the backyard. We had a childhood that was, in many ways, charmed. Or at least it felt that way until we got older and started keeping score. I'm 34. Marissa is 31 and 7 months pregnant with her first child, a baby girl with a soon-to-be Instagrammable nursery, a monogram diaper bag, and a mother who's already bought matching yoga sets for them both. Her husband, Darren, is nice enough in a bland, consultant kind of way. They met through a law school mixer at UC Berkeley. She made partner last year. I lost my job at the library when the city slashed funding. I've been job hunting for 5 months. I apply, I network, I tailor every resume like it's a love letter, and still nothing. I haven't even told most of the family. Only my mom and my best friend Casey know the full story. I still tell people I consult for nonprofit literacy projects. Which technically isn't a lie, I did, once. But not lately. I almost didn't go to the baby shower. I hate these things, the games, the forced cheer, the endless talk about sleep schedules and breast pumps. But when the pastel envelope arrived, hand-addressed by Marissa herself, it felt like a dare. Like she wanted to see if I'd show up, smile, and play along. So I did. The backyard was decorated like a Pinterest board threw up on it. String lights, linen tablecloths, mason jars with floating candles, you know the type. Women in floral maxi dresses sipped mimosas from glass flutes while comparing stroller brands. I wore a navy sundress that I got on sale from Target, paired with sandals that had a crack in the sole I hoped no one would notice. The guess who? Whiteboard was set up near the dessert table. A cutesy game, where guests had to match anonymous facts to the people present. Some were sweet. Has a rescue dog. Went skydiving in college. But one line stood out like a sore thumb: one of us got a promotion, one's still on unemployment. I didn't move. My body stiffened the way it does when I hear someone call my name in a doctor's waiting room. The black marker was fresh enough that the ink hadn't fully dried. I didn't have to guess who it was about. And then, from a few feet away, I heard her voice, the casual, amused tone she always used when she was trying to play something off as funny. "So, facts are facts." She looked directly at me. Shrugged. Laughed. It wasn't even her handwriting on the board, but she didn't care. Maybe she thought it was harmless. Or maybe she wanted it there, a reminder to everyone that in the scoreboard of adulthood, she was winning, and I wasn't even in the game. I laughed too, because that's what you do when you're cornered in front of people you barely know. I forced a smile, felt my ears burn, and turned away so I wouldn't have to see who else was looking at me. From that moment on, I drifted around the party like a ghost. I clapped during the diaper raffle. I smiled during the gift opening. I stayed polite while sipping pink punch that tasted like cough syrup. I wanted to leave so badly I could feel the tension in my molars. But I had brought a gift, and I wanted her to open it. I hadn't brought anything from her registry. Not because I couldn't afford it, although, honestly, that was part of it, but because I wanted to do something that mattered. Something real. Inside the plain brown paper bag was a white document box. Inside that was a letter I wrote in pen, with the bank paperwork clipped to it. I'd opened a $529 college savings plan for the baby. I used most of the money from my severance package, what little was left after rent and groceries. It wasn't a grand amount. Just $5,000. But I also committed to adding $150 a month from my unemployment checks for a full year. I figured that was more valuable than another 3-pack of bibs. When she pulled out the box and opened the envelope, the entire backyard went still. I didn't expect her to read the letter out loud, but she did every word. Her voice changed as she got through the second paragraph. I saw her face shift, first confused, then blank, then something I hadn't seen from her in years: softness. I didn't look at the crowd. I kept my eyes on the dirt between the bricks. The silence that followed the reading was the loudest sound I've ever heard. She didn't cry, not then. But her hands trembled as she folded the letter back into the envelope. Then she said my name. Just once. Meredith. And that's when I said, calm as I could, facts are facts. Then I stood up, walked inside the house, and closed the door behind me. In the kitchen, I busied myself with stacking empty plates, organizing plastic utensils, anything to avoid crying. My mother came in and started helping without saying anything about the scene. She asked if someone had taken the last of the cupcakes. I said maybe. I was trying not to fall apart. The adrenaline was leaving my body like water draining from a tub. I suddenly felt so tired I could have collapsed right there on the linoleum. A few minutes later, Marissa came in. Quietly. No flower crown. Her face stripped of whatever armor she'd worn at the start of the party. She looked like the girl I used to share bunk beds with, before adulthood taught us how to hurt each other in subtle ways. I didn't write that on the board, she said. I didn't respond. But I saw it. And I didn't erase it. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. And I'm sorry. I was trying to be. I don't know. Funny? I looked at her, not angry anymore. Just tired. You don't have to explain it, I said. She stepped closer, awkwardly holding her stomach. Thank you for the account. I don't know what to say. I didn't want to hear a thank you. Not really. I wanted her to understand what it meant, not the money, but the decision. To give, even when I had less. To show up, even when it hurt. You don't have to say anything, I told her. Just do better. For her. She nodded. Not quickly, not like someone agreeing just to move on, but slowly, like someone taking it in. She left the kitchen after that. I stayed and helped clean up, mostly in silence. That night, after I got home, I found a photo message from her. It was a close-up of the account paperwork, the baby's name scribbled in cursive under the beneficiary line. She wrote, I hope she grows up to be someone like you. I read that message 3 times. First with disbelief, then with confusion, and finally with a strange kind of ache in my chest that I couldn't quite name. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was trying to make a point, but because I genuinely didn't know what to say. I was still processing everything: the humiliation, the silence that followed, the way her voice cracked when she read my letter, and now this unexpected softness. This gesture that felt like it came from a different version of my sister. One I hadn't seen in a long time. I put my phone face down and stared at the ceiling. My little sublet room was quiet except for the sound of traffic outside. A siren passed, then faded. Someone upstairs turned on their shower. I thought about the last time I truly felt close to Marissa. It was years ago, after Dad had his first stroke. We'd both flown in, me from my apartment in Fremont, her from wherever she was clerking at the time, and for once, the scorekeeping between us stopped. We took turns sitting at his bedside, holding his hand when he drifted off, arguing quietly about whose turn it was to get coffee from the hospital cafeteria. We laughed then. Shared stupid memories about the time he tried to build us a treehouse and nailed his shirt to the ladder. She cried when we had to fly home. So did I. But after that, life happened, or maybe ego happened, and the space between us grew again. It wasn't just the baby shower. It was years of small wounds. Her jokes that felt more like jabs. My silence that probably felt like judgment. Mom's favoritism that neither of us acknowledged directly but both felt sharply. Every birthday that passed without a call. Every holiday where one of us found a reason to stay away. And now, suddenly, we were texting about a college fund for a baby that wasn't even born yet. The next morning, I sent her a simple reply, "Thanks. That means more than you know." She responded a few minutes later, "Would you want to come to the next OB appointment? It's just a checkup, but I'd like you there." I stared at that message longer than I probably should have. It wasn't something I expected. Not from her. Not after everything. I almost said no. It would have been easier to stay distant. But I thought about Eliza, the name she'd picked for her daughter. I thought about the little girl who would grow up hearing stories about Aunt Meredith. I wanted those stories to be kind. I wanted to earn them. So I said yes. The appointment was at a private clinic in Palo Alto, all glass walls and light wood interiors, with spa music playing in the background. I showed up early, sat in the waiting room with my hands folded over my lap, pretending to read a brochure about prenatal nutrition while trying not to let my nerves show. Marissa arrived 5 minutes late, hair pulled into a neat bun, a cardigan tied loosely around her shoulders. She looked surprised to see me there already. "You actually came," she said. I gave her a look. "You invited me." "Yeah, I know. I wasn't sure." We didn't hug. But she sat next to me, and when the nurse called her name, she gestured for me to follow like it was the most natural thing in the world. The exam itself was uneventful, standard measurements, lots of jargon I didn't really understand. But then the doctor turned on the monitor, and the room filled with the rhythmic, rapid beat of a fetal heartbeat. I don't know why, but it made something in my throat tighten. I blinked fast. Marissa looked at me from the exam table. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just, loud heartbeat for someone so tiny." She laughed. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like it was at my expense. After the appointment, we grabbed lunch at a nearby cafe. The conversation was stilted at first, safe topics like baby names, maternity leave policies, and the absurd price of strollers. But then it got deeper. Slowly. Organically. "You know," she said, stirring her iced tea, "I used to think you looked down on me." I blinked. "What?" "You went into books, learning. Helping people." "I went into contracts and mergers. Dad always said you had the good heart." I laughed, but not because it was funny. "Marissa, you're literally creating a human being and making sure she has a roof over her head. That's a good heart too." She looked away, embarrassed. Still. It always felt like a competition. It was, I admitted. But I don't think either of us wanted it to be. It just became one. She nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for someone else to say it first. There was a long pause. "Why'd you really open that account?" she asked. "Be honest." I looked at her. "Because I know what it's like to worry about money. And I know what it's like to feel alone. I don't want your daughter to feel either. Even if we never talk again, I want her to have a chance." She didn't say anything for a while after that. Then she reached across the table and touched my hand. Lightly. Hesitantly. Like she wasn't sure if she was allowed. "I don't deserve that," she said quietly. I shrugged. "Probably not. But she does." We didn't talk much after that. But it didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like understanding. Like the kind of silence you get after saying everything that matters. In the weeks that followed, something odd happened. She started texting me. Just little things at first. Pictures of the nursery. Complaints about back pain. A weird craving she had for jalapeno chips at midnight. Then she started asking for help. Could I come with her to the baby store? Could I look over the maternity leave policy from her firm? Could I help her sort through boxes of our old baby clothes in Mom's attic? And I did. Without hesitation. Not because I'd forgiven her entirely, or because everything was magically healed. But because she asked. Because I was being let in piece by piece, and it felt like a door that had been locked for years was starting to crack open. One afternoon, as we were going through some old baby clothes that Mom had saved in vacuum-sealed bags from the 90s, Marissa held up a tiny yellow sweater. It still smelled faintly of cedar. Do you remember this? She asked. I laughed. You cried when I got to wear it first. You had the bigger head, she muttered. I shrugged. Still do. She grinned, then turned serious. I want you to be her godmother, she said. I've already talked to Darren. I froze. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. It doesn't feel right otherwise. I said yes, of course. But that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had gotten here from passive-aggressive digs on a whiteboard to this. And maybe, I thought, it had nothing to do with forgiveness. Maybe it was just remembering who we used to be. Who we still could be. A few days after she asked me to be the godmother, I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by a few open boxes and a half-written resume. I had just finished another rejection email, the kind that reads like a polite slap, when I got a message from Marissa. You still have that whiteboard? I stared at it for a minute. Then I replied, yeah. Why? Bring it next time you come over. So I did. When I got there, she had cleared a space in the nursery. Pale lavender walls, plush rug, rocking chair in the corner. A few of the baby shower decorations were still taped to the closet door, tissue paper clouds, and some glittered lettering that read, "You are so loved." I hadn't seen it finished until now. She gestured toward the dresser. We're putting up affirmations for her, she said. Stuff to grow up with. I want to paint over that board. Use it for her. I placed it gently on the carpet, ran my fingers over the faint, stained remnants of the writing. One of us got a promotion, one's still on unemployment, I said aloud, softly. You know, I didn't even cry that day. She looked at me. When did you cry? Later. Alone. In my car. We didn't speak for a while after that. I pulled out some paint she had sitting on a tray nearby and started mixing colors. Soft greens, a little yellow. She sat next to me and picked up a brush. I thought it would make me feel better, she finally said. Seeing it on the board. Like I was winning something. But it didn't. It just made everything worse. Yeah, I said, it usually does. We spent the rest of the afternoon painting the whiteboard. Over the ghost of that sentence, we layered flowers, little stars, and in the center, in Marissa's steady hand, "You're already enough." She said she wanted Eliza to read that one day, when she had her own doubts, when the world started telling her she had to measure up to impossible things. I didn't tell her, but the moment felt more like it was for us two sisters finally clearing a debt they'd carried far too long. Weeks passed, and her due date loomed closer. She was on modified bed rest, which meant I started seeing her more often. Sometimes I came by just to sit with her while she napped. Other times we binge-watched shows she said she was too smart to enjoy and ate way too many frozen mini quiches she'd stockpiled in her freezer. She let herself be soft with me. That was new. She didn't flinch when I mentioned a failed job interview. She asked questions, real ones, without flinching. She even offered to pass along my resume to someone in HR at her firm. I declined, and she didn't push. That, too, was new. One afternoon, she asked if I wanted to help her pack the hospital bag. I know you hate packing, I teased. You made me do your bags before every family trip growing up. Yeah, and you packed like a military quartermaster, she grinned. I need that energy now. We sat on the edge of the bed, folding baby onesies, arranging tiny socks like doll clothes. She had a playlist running in the background, old 90s R&B that we grew up listening to on the stereo in the living room. It was oddly comforting. Then she looked up and asked, "Do you ever think about what it would have been like if we'd just gotten along earlier?" "All the time," I said. She nodded, like that answer didn't surprise her. "I kept thinking you were judging me for being so career-focused," she said. "For not being, I don't know, as thoughtful, as giving." "I thought you were looking down on me for not being ambitious enough," I said. She laughed softly. "God. We're dumb." "No, we were just young," I corrected. The thing about sisters, especially the kind who grow up close, is that you don't always realize how long you've been carrying an old version of each other in your heads. I'd still been thinking of her as the smug teenager who rolled her eyes at my book recommendations, the one who told me I'd never make real money working in a library. She'd still been thinking of me as the moral high ground police, the sibling who turned silence into judgment. We both missed the women we had become. A few nights later, I got a call just after 2 a.m. Her voice was calm, too calm. "It's time." I didn't even stop to brush my hair. I threw on the first hoodie I could find and drove like a woman possessed across town to the hospital. When I got there, Darren was already pacing outside the triage area. "Where is she?" I asked. "Room 307. They just admitted her." I found her hooked up to machines, looking pale but focused. She gave me a weak smile. "Only 8 hours later than I predicted," she joked. "You always were late," I said. She reached out for my hand, and I held it. Labor was long. Exhausting. She wanted me to stay, and I did, through the contractions, through the swearing, through the frustrated tears. Darren tried his best to help, but it was clear she needed something different from him than she needed from me. I was her anchor, in some strange, unexpected way. It was almost 6 p.m. when the baby finally arrived. Eliza rose. 7 pounds, 1 ounce. The tiniest, most fragile thing I'd ever seen. The moment the nurse placed her on Marissa's chest, something in me cracked open. I had no idea I could love someone so instantly. Marissa looked at me, hair plastered to her forehead, tears streaked across her cheeks, and said, "You want to hold her?" I did. My hand shook when I reached out, but the moment she was in my arms, all the noise faded. She opened one eye. Just one. And yawned. That was it. I was done for. I stood there, gently rocking this brand new life, and I felt something shift in my bones. Like I'd finally arrived somewhere I didn't even know I'd been trying to reach. After the hospital, things didn't go back to normal, they went somewhere better. Marissa still had her moment's sharpness when she was overtired, the occasional controlling streak, but now she caught herself. Now she apologized. She told people I was the godmother like it was a badge of honor. I could see the change in how she talked about me, with warmth, not competition. We started seeing each other once a week, sometimes more. I'd bring groceries or help with the baby. We'd talk. Not perform. Not posture. Just talk. I told her when I got a part-time offer to work at a nonprofit literacy center. She cried. I hadn't expected that. She told me she was terrified she'd mess up as a mom. I told her I already saw her doing it right. We weren't perfect. But we were different now. The whiteboard now hung in Eliza's nursery, just above the bookshelf. The words we painted were still there, untouched. "You're already enough." Some days, I looked at it and thought it was for the baby. Other days, I thought it was for both of us. 3 months after Eliza was born, the visits became routine. I'd come over once or twice a week. Help with feedings. Fold tiny clothes. Rock her during her fussy 3 a.m. window when Marissa was too exhausted to keep her eyes open. We'd sit on the back porch with mugs of tea, watching Eliza sleep in the bassinet, wrapped like a burrito. The air between us was no longer full of comparison. It was finally clear. But it wasn't completely honest. Because despite how far we'd come, I hadn't forgotten what she said at the baby shower. What she let slide. What she thought was funny. The passive cruelty wasn't just that one moment, it was a symptom of something larger, a deep-rooted pattern that stretched across years. And though things were different now, I still couldn't shake the part of me that wanted her to see the difference between us. Not just apologize. Not just make nice. But see me. Really see me as the one who had fallen, and still stood up anyway. That moment came sooner than I expected. It started when Darren's firm downsized. Word got around that his project was being phased out, and by the end of October, he was laid off. Marissa didn't say anything at first. She kept her tone light when she mentioned it in passing. He's exploring new opportunities, but I could read between the lines. I knew that tone. The panic behind it. By December, they were behind on their second mortgage. Marissa went on a tight budget. She canceled the cleaner, the baby yoga classes, the organic subscription boxes. It wasn't desperation yet, but it was close enough that the panic showed up in her voice, even when she tried to hide it. One afternoon, she asked to meet me at a coffee shop in Menlo Park, not her usual airy, bougie hangout. A cheaper place. Quieter. Fewer oat milk options. She looked tired. Pale. Her shirt had a small spit-up stain near the shoulder. Hey, she said, sitting down, fingers already gripping her cup. I sat. Waited. So. I was thinking about your literacy work, she said, carefully. And how you've been doing consulting stuff again. That's still going, right? I raised an eyebrow. It's going. Why? Well, she hesitated, I might be launching a parenting blog. Long-form content, resources, mental health interviews, that sort of thing. I thought maybe I could contract you to write and edit. Help with strategy? I took a slow sip of my coffee. You want to hire me? She gave a half smile. I want to pay you fairly to help me build something. You've done this kind of work for years. And I think I need your voice more than mine. I nodded. What's the budget? She blinked. Excuse me? I need to know the budget. The project scope. Timeline. Payment terms. I don't work for thank yous anymore. There was a long pause. Her lips parted, then closed. She nodded slowly. Right. Yeah. Of course. I opened my bag and pulled out a one-page proposal I had typed up the night before. I'd suspected this might come, not the project, but the ask. I had the rates listed clearly. I even had a section for optional services, with sliding scale fees depending on the number of posts, analytics reporting, and audience growth consulting. She read it, her expression shifting slowly from surprise to respect. I wasn't expecting all this, she said. I'm sure, I said calmly. Most people don't expect the unemployed one to bring contracts. And just like that, the memory of that whiteboard re-entered the room. She glanced down. Avoided my eyes. I deserved that, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I just waited as she flipped through the paper one more time. You'll get a signed copy tonight, she said, folding it carefully. When she left the coffee shop, I stayed behind. I watched her walk toward her car, one hand clutching her phone, the other fumbling with keys. She didn't look defeated. She looked humbled. And I realized then this was my revenge. Not because I wanted to see her fail. But because for the first time I had the leverage. I was no longer the punchline to her story. I was the one she needed. The one who had quietly become irreplaceable. Over the next 3 months, I built her blog from scratch. I wrote content. Developed her brand voice. Structured the site. Advised her on community building. I did it all with professionalism and grace, not out of spite, but because I knew the best revenge isn't hampered. It's being better. It's watching the person who once looked down on you slowly realize you've surpassed them, not because you climbed over them, but because you kept going when they laughed at you for falling. Her blog did well. Not viral, not overnight success, but steady, organic growth. She gained real followers. People engaged with the stories. She even landed a brand partnership with a small parenting site that paid for guest posts. The night she hit 5,000 subscribers, she sent me a voice message. I could hear Eliza babbling in the background. "You made this happen," she said. "I don't say it enough, but I'm grateful. I didn't know how much I needed you." And I smiled. Because I knew she meant it. Because this time it wasn't pity. It wasn't guilt. It was respect. The whiteboard still hangs in Eliza's room. And sometimes, when I'm visiting, I catch her staring at it while I read her a bedtime story. "You're already enough," I whisper as I tuck her in. And then I walk out, past the shelves I helped build, the books I helped pick, and the quiet, knowing glance Marissa gives me as I pass her in the hallway. She knows now. I was never the unemployed sister. I was the one who showed up when it mattered. The one who gave more than I had. The one who taught her that you don't need a title to have worth. That's not cruelty. That's justice. That's enough. And now so am I.